Literally everything that I'm posting from fitness, cars is just for motivation purposes. I'm not here to sell anyone anything. Welcome back, everyone. As you may have seen the title, today's video is actually not about cars, just like the thumbnail. Today's different. We've been talking a lot about the cars and everything, but a question that does come up a lot is about my change in health and my weight loss. And today's video, we're actually going to go sit down. I'm going to actually give a full breakdown. This will be a very interesting video. Just like the title says, I did lose 300 pounds in a matter of 18 months. There's actually some very kind of deep things that kind of took place in my life and that I never thought I'd ever be sharing, but now's the opportunity to do so in this video. So yeah, just join along. We're going to go sit down and get right into this. So I do get a lot of people that have, for the last couple of years, actually been hitting me up about how I lost weight. And I know it's a lot easier to watch short-term content and look and say, oh, hey, what did this guy do? He maybe did this, maybe did that. And I get a lot of, feedback and a lot of positive feedback, despite whatever anyone thinks. I would say over the last few years, I've gotten a lot of messages from people that have actually used the videos that I post as just motivation. And even if one person did it, I was more than satisfied. But I was actually getting hundreds of DMs of people over the last few years where they're like, look, we used your video as just a motivating piece. And it was enough to push them. Whether someone's goal was to knock off 20 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, or more, it's amazing to see. And that alone was enough satisfaction for me to continue to do that, to post more, regardless of some negative feedback that I receive. Everyone receives negative feedback. That's normal, right? But I want to take everyone back from the start to now of how my whole transformation took place. For that, I want to bring everyone kind of up to date with what I've been for the last 2 decades kind of dealing with. And a lot of it has to do with addiction. And I know most people are never really comfortable speaking about kind of the things that they went through in life. But, this started when I was 13 years old and I'm 34 now. And I think at this point in time in my life, I'm okay and comfortable to talk about it. And I want everyone to kind of join along and kind of, we want you to understand why there's no short answer when people are commenting, oh, why don't you just tell us what you do, what you do. It's not as easy to kind of say, hey, this is what I did. There are many different methods. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a fitness coach. I didn't have any help from no nutritionist or fitness coach or anyone. So this is all just kind of what I dealt with, and I hope that it can help more people as well. But I want to rewind back. Stick around though, like you will be blown away with what I've kind of dealt with health-wise in the last 2 decades. This all starts when I was 13 years old, and just like anyone else growing up, as a kid, you are brought things forward where you shouldn't be. I'm not saying, some people may think smoking's okay or not okay, but I was 13 years old. I was introduced to smoking. And this is where things kind of started to deteriorate health-wise. Without getting into too much particulars, I had somebody who introduced me into smoking at the age of 13. Yes, the age of 13 years old. Sometimes there are bad influences that do come along in our life. At that point, I started smoking. It was my own choice and my own doing. Of course, no one would force me into it. But as a 13-year-old, I thought it was a cool thing at that time to start smoking, which led into a couple of years later. By the time I was 16, I was already chain smoking, back-to-back smoking cigarettes. I used to smoke about a pack and a half a day almost of cigarettes. And I was smoking at that time a lot of like marijuana as well when I was in high school, and up until about 17 to 18 range. So I finally was able to stop smoking by the time I was 18 because I started getting more kind of anxiety with the weed. And how I overcame that kind of addiction was I tried going completely cold turkey. It never worked. But what I did was I thought, you know what, let's give it patience and try this for the next 7, 8, 9 months. So I started off first by reducing how much I was smoking. At first, I got to the point where I was smoking quite a bit, but I got down to a pack to half a pack to eventually just a cigarette a day, and then eventually down to just kind of a rewarder smoke in a sense. Where I know this is very crazy and bizarre to say that I started smoking when I was 13 years old, but I just want to be fully transparent with everyone about what I kind of dealt with, and that's why I want to start right from the beginning. So right around about when I turned 19 is when I completely stopped smoking. Keep in mind, I'm 34 years old now, so I haven't smoked since I was 19 years old. I never will smoke again. There's no plan, of course, ever to do that. But that's kind of where all this first started. Fast forward, I'm in college, 19, 20 years old. This is right around, I know some people would be introduced to drinking right maybe around 18 or so. And again, I'm not saying there's anything bad with drinking, but this is to do with on the addictive side. Some people are able to control liquor, whereas of course some people sadly are not able to, and I was one of the people that were not able to control it. So I started getting introduced to alcohol around 20 to 21 years of age, and that's kind of when I stopped smoking. I started drinking a little more coffee. I did start having a bit more of an appetite, so I started eating a little bit more. And when I actually got into started kind of social drinking, then started going out just like any other person at that age that was going out and stuff. I started socially drinking to going out to more bars, clubs. Started drinking a little bit more frequently. By the time I was around 21, I'd say about 21, I started drinking almost every day. Which fast forwarding up until I was around 28, 29, I believe it was. I'll throw up a clip as well. I was around 28, 29. By that point, like my drinking was very out of control. And at that point, I would never have admitted that I had a problem with drinking. But it was too far gone to the point where I was already at that point extremely overweight. And I was at that peak point of where I was 520, around close to 525 pounds. I've been through that whole feeling of obviously being on a scale and scale not working, having to get another scale. But that excessive drinking led to a lot of overeating. With all the overeating, of course, I had that weight gain. How did I get to 525 pounds? It was because of the excessive drinking, excessive eating, but I was excessively consuming a lot of pop. So whenever I would make drinks, I would put a lot of sugar, of course, liquid sugar from all the pop and stuff. So at that point, now my consumption of calories is extreme and excessive. Like, at that age, maybe my maintenance calories should have been around 22 to 2,500 calories. I was consuming close to 10,000 calories almost a day, which is extremely insane to think about, because of all the alcohol consumption, because of all the fast food, and it was extremely, of course, unhealthy. But I was getting to the point where things are getting very, very uncomfortable. But I can't convince myself that, like, I'm at a very dangerous point in my life where it's all fun and games, of course, until you have health problems. So one day I had gone out, same thing as usual, and this was winter. So I went out, and we went out, came back home. As I was coming up to my driveway, it was icy. Everyone had left, and I'm walking up the driveway. I had slipped on ice. I slipped, and I'm there screaming. And inside, the family heard me, and they thought, okay, maybe he's just drinking a lot. Maybe that's what happened, and he just fell, and maybe that's why he's not getting up. What actually had happened was I slipped, and my leg had gone the other way. So I ended up actually completely tearing my ACL, fracturing my bone, strain on the MCL and the other ligaments, and like a cyst in the kneecap, and like a whole bunch of stuff. So being a heavier person, of course, this was not something easy to overcome. As time passed, I thought, some people mentioned, hey, look, ACLs repair themselves, but my ACL never repaired because it was fully torn. So being a heavier person, imagine being that heavy, even crutches are extremely hard to use. So when I was using the crutches, same thing, mentally it becomes disturbing. So for about 6 months, I was on those crutches. And even after that, you would think, okay, like, you had that kind of experience. What really led to it is it was icy, yes, but it was also my poor judgment because I was drunk. Because I wasn't drinking to, have a good time. The drinking started off with, hey, have a good time. Drinking then became, oh, hey, you're drinking because, it's fun. But then it led to more kind of emotional, sad, to blackout drinking. Like, you have to drink to black out. And that's kind of where I would say I was at that point of alcoholism, and I was drinking excessively to a dangerous level. So when this had happened, you would think, okay, you know what, maybe it would wake you up, and you would say, okay, you know what, this is not for me. I need to kind of take a break, and I shouldn't do this. 6 to 7 months, I finally started getting better, and I'm not fully mobile, but the mobility is not completely there. But I'm still, on crutches. I'm about to be off crutches in about maybe a week or so. And I decide to go out because now I feel better, go for a dinner. And, I remember we had gotten one of our vehicles to come pick us up, or one of the drivers. And, the driver came and we went for dinner, came back and get home at like 6 a.m. in the morning. Keep in mind, I'm already on crutches. So we're using a sprinter, one of our sprinters. And as I'm getting this is 6 in the morning, I'm getting out of the sprinter. What happens? I fall again. This is obviously my own doing. I wasn't recovered. I should have stuck home. I should have focused on recovering, but I didn't, and it was completely my fault. So I ended up in the hospital again because I actually fell on the same leg again, and I'm going through the same pain. But remember, my ACL is fully torn. So what's happening now? I put strain on those other ligaments again. And I remember going to the emergency care, like the doctor, and the doctor goes, like, are you kidding me? He gave me a reality check. He goes, "You're how heavy? You fell on your same leg again." He's like, "Listen," he's like, "You're so heavy that I can't even perform a surgery on you." He's like, "Without a risk of you clotting and pretty much obviously passing away." And he's like, he's like, "God forbid you get into an accident." He's like, "How will I ever be able to save you?" And like, that's kind of where I'm like, oh, well, okay, the things that he's saying, it's all true. He's like, he's like, at this weight, I'll give you a few years before your other leg gives out. And he's like, for the rest of your life, you're going to be in a wheelchair. The emergency doctor at that point gave me a very good, obviously, wake up call. And things kind of started, in my mind kind of processing. So I'm about 30 years old now, right? And so the problem here in Canada is obviously, even with healthcare, the wait times are extremely long. And so I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get my ACL surgery done here. But it was like a couple of years, or 2 years, I think it was, sorry. And somebody had mentioned, they're like, listen, they're like, we recommend that you should go to India and just pay for it, right? Like, yes, I'm fortunate enough to have the option of going out somewhere else to get that done. And I was like, okay, maybe I can kind of get my health in order, and maybe I can start working on this. But I need to be able to move around. I'm just heavy, and like, maybe I can kind of get my weight in order and everything. So I slowly start kind of doing some bit of dieting and stuff. But obviously, being a heavier person, my body being used to the high calorie intake, it just honestly wasn't working. So then I had gone to India actually for my ACL. Like, so I went there for based on getting my ACL surgery done. But keep in mind, this was in 2020, around end of 2020. This was peak COVID time. Usually, obviously, I'm very busy with work. I'm occupied with work. I wouldn't be able to get away. And that's kind of the sad part, that like being so busy with work during the day, I'm doing my work, and in the evenings, all I'm doing is kind of wasting my time, not wasting my time, but partying away, drinking, and it's just too much. Um, so I had gotten that time to get away during COVID because, of course, work was grounded. Nothing's really happening here. I'm like, this is kind of the perfect opportunity to get away. And so, me and my mom, we had gone to India. So I'd gone there based on pretty much my ACL, right? So there's a certain kind of window. I think it is a couple of weeks that you have to, like, before doing it. Yeah, you have to, like, there's certain things, I guess, with consumption and food and stuff. So I'd gone to see this doctor in India. And before leaving here, actually, our family doctor goes, listen, he's like, you're way too heavy. He's like, if you go to India, he's like, and you get this surgery done for your ACL, he's like, you got to be extremely careful that you don't get COVID in India, because he's like, if you, with your weight, if you get COVID in India, you're done. Like, you're toast. Like, there's no saving you, because simply merely of the fact of how heavy you are. And COVID is obviously a dangerous part. Well, dangerous for everyone at that point, but nobody really knew kind of how the strain was in India, and on the news, of course, they're showing it to be extreme. But remember, I'm going through all this in life where I'm already dealing with kind of enough with weight and everything, and I'm like, okay, you know what, I kind of need to get things back in line, in order, and I have to do this. So when I got to India, I seen the doctor goes, listen, he's like, you're concerned about your ACL, but you should be concerned first about your weight. He's like, obviously your muscles around the ligament and stuff, those can wait. He's like, this should be secondary. Your first priority, he's like, is getting yourself in line, getting your weight in line. So he's like, look, he's like, I recommend, he's like, you should do this, they call it gastric bypass. So he goes, I recommend that you should do gastric bypass. And I'm like, what's gastric bypass? But I'm very scared. Even the ACL surgery, I was extremely scared. I'm like, I don't want, I didn't want to do this, but I had to do this because at that point, I'm like, things are too far gone. So he goes, this is what it is. He's like, it's not, no, sometimes people talk about liposuction. It's none of that. It's not liposuction. It's not sometimes people make jokes, BBL. No, it's not that. It's not a tummy tuck. Tummy tuck is actually after the fact of losing weight. But it's none of those. So gastric bypass, what it does is it actually reduces your stomach. I guess they staple your stomach temporarily smaller. So you're forced into a calorie deficit. So leading up to kind of this for a couple of weeks, he goes, listen, he's like, for a few weeks, he's like, you have to kind of be in a forced calorie deficit to begin with before even doing this gastric bypass. So what that meant was you had to just simply drink soup with no particles. Literally, like you're like 100 maybe calories of consumption a day in order to perform this. But typically for this gastric bypass, you have to go through counseling. You have to meet a counselor. So quite a bit of stuff. But he's like, look, he's like, you are in extremely bad shape, just with your weight and everything. And he's like, there's no time for any of this. And he's like, you know, he's like, and I'm like, listen, isn't this kind of risky? He goes, but he's like, you're living risky right now anyways, right? And I'm like, no, but I'm scared of surgery. It's just that. He goes, he's like, every day, he's like, you're going to sleep, waking up. He's like, it's risky with your weight, especially how heavy you are. And I'm like, okay, he kind of gave me an eye opener and everything. And he goes, like, but I was very scared of doing this gastric thing that they're talking about, especially like being in India and like during peak COVID season, like kind of not COVID season, but on we're all over the news. People are without oxygen and all those things, that all that kind of peak of COVID at that time. So he goes, listen, he's like, I recommend you do this. And he's like, this is the right approach. Do your gastric, then your knee surgery you can do down the line. And I'm like, okay. I made the mistake I shouldn't have, which was for a few weeks I was drinking or away from drinking. I had stopped drinking, and being in India, I made that one dumb mistake, which was day before I drank again, and I went to India with the in mind that I'm figuring out my health stuff, and I'm not like I'm gonna be in line. So next day I had gone to, they do this with the camera, they just check, they put like, I forgot what they call it, it's like endoscopy I think it's called, but I had gone and they're like and I'm intoxicated. I had gone next morning hungover, and they're just like, okay, this guy is just like I know they're not saying it, but they're looking at me like this guy's just a lost case with like when it comes to all of this, right? And same thing, doctor tied me down again. He's like, listen, you need to take this serious. And he's like, this is not a joke, your health. And he's like, you can clearly tell that you have a problem, right? At that point, I had taken obviously the risk and I had done the gastric. So I'd done the gastric, and the doctor goes, listen, he's like, this is not, you're not coming out of here losing any weight. He's like, the rest is up to you. He's like, people get gastric done. He's like, it's a 6 month kind of a booster in a sense. You got to remember, is like, I'm not trying to lose 20 pounds, 40 pounds. I have a lot of weight to lose, right? Whereas for many other people, it's very easily achievable if they're in the 250 to 280 range, and they're trying to get down to 230, 240, 250. I was over 500 pounds. That he's like, look, you need to be in the low 200s. He's like, you're way over, right? So I had done it, and he goes, this is just a booster. He's like, what it's going to do is it's going to force you into a calorie deficit, but the rest is up to you. He's like, for 6 months, he's like, after 6 months, you're back to normal. He's like, it's just 6 months. It's going to keep your stomach tighter, and it'll, if you eat, it's going to kind of force you to be in that deficit. But the rest obviously is going to be up to you. He's like, I have patients after 6 months that actually end up putting all their weight back on. So keep in mind, now I'm 5 years in. Like 5 years, I've been obviously I kept the weight off, right? When I had got it done, I'm like, okay, what did I do? Because you go through hell. This is mentally, it kills you mentally. Like the first kind of week after that, you're like, well, what did I do? So about a week or a week and a half in, I actually ended up getting more sick after doing that gastric bypass. So I got sick, and they had taken me to another hospital. And when they took me to the hospital, they're like, okay, you have a stomach infection. So now they're treating me for a stomach infection, and this was where COVID again is at the highest rise, right? In Canada, I remember seeing on the news they were pushing obviously everyone in the hospital wearing masks and everything. They're the nurses and they weren't wearing masks. So I remember a nurse coming in coughing, sick, and I'm like, oh, like this is not obviously what I would have thought I'd be dealing with, and I just had that bad feeling. Go figure. A week passes, I actually end up getting COVID. So remember, I just had bypass done, gastric bypass done, and I just had a stomach infection. Now I have COVID. Now my everything starts kind of deteriorating pretty bad, where my oxygen level starts dropping. Then they took me to another special hospital, an ICU unit, in like a city called Jalandhar in India. And I remember, just being in this hospital. But this was probably the most traumatizing thing I've ever seen in my life, because this was the peak of COVID, where there's no oxygen cylinders left for anyone. And I remember lying in the bed, and the doctor walking in, and he goes, "Listen," he's like, I'm gonna try my best to save you, but he's like, if you sleep on your back, he's like, I can't save you. Remember, I'm Canadian born in Canada, and I've been to India 2 times. So this is not something I ever thought I'd ever deal with in my life, let alone going to do the bypass, to getting a stomach infection there, and then all of a sudden now ending up in the hospital in an ICU unit after doing all that. Literally like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks in an ICU unit, with COVID. So he's like, you have pneumonia in your lungs. He's like, if you sleep on your back, he's like, you're going to compress your airways. He's like, and then he's like, you're done. He's like, you're too heavy. He's like, you have to sleep on your side. So I'm like, okay, meanwhile, again, I'm dealing with all this. I have all these medications going on. So I'm sleeping on my side. I was there for about a month or so. But in that month, the amount of traumatizing stuff that I had seen, which was seeing people pass away. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm obviously this heavier person. These are young, fit individuals. I saw in maybe a span of a couple of weeks, at least maybe 15 people pass away in front of me in the same ICU unit, where they would come in, they're young, they're healthy, mid 20s, maybe 30s, and they're there for maybe a day, they pass away, and just they're gone. And I asked the nurse, I'm like, why is all this happening? They're like, it's very simple. It's just they don't have the money for medication. So this was one of those reality checks where I'm like, okay, they, this is what the reality of the world is, that we forget how fortunate we are. And as much as you try to help everyone there, there's only so much you can do. And even for us, like all the medication we had to go buy outside of the hospital from black market. That was half the problem, that a lot of the medication was limited as well. And so seeing this is obviously a very traumatizing experience for someone who's born here, in Canada. And it was a big eye opener. And in that moment is when you realize that like you'll give up anything just to be back home, just with your family. And remember, this is my own doing, because I shouldn't have even been in India to begin with. But I had traveled to India because everyone's like, hey, India it's open. Like, it's not like how people are showing on the news, and it's not as bad as people make it seem. That COVID's not bad out here, and I just kind of fell for that. And but seeing the situation firsthand and being there, and this was when they were on the news talking about people and bodies being burned on the streets. And I was in the hospital watching downstairs when news channels are there in front of the hospital, and like meanwhile my mom can't come see me, and I'm going through a whole bunch of mental emotions, because I'm like, listen, I don't want to be here. Take everything I have, just let me go home. But you can't. They won't let you go home, because of course now you're a patient that has COVID and can't be released until obviously you're negative. So I'm, just like everyone else that's dealing with it, stuck in this hospital. And being obviously a Canadian stuck in a hospital in India, with COVID, and seeing a lot of this traumatizing stuff around me, um, it mentally played a big toll. So I had come out of the hospital about a month later, but now a month later they had cut off all flights coming into Canada because of how bad COVID was. So I actually ended up getting stuck in India for about 4 months. So I had come out of the hospital, and then they were like, okay, first what happened was actually when I came out, there was a window where I could have flown, but they're like, you can't fly because of the pneumonia, something to do with the pneumonia in the lungs. That you have to take these injections every day, and you're unable to fly and travel. So I couldn't get out of there. So then by the time I'm doing that, the flights had closed anyways. Then eventually, another month passes, and I'm good again. But they didn't open at this point, like for Canada to come back in Canada, but the U.S. was open. So I had to actually fly from India through Doha to the US, from the US drive into back into Canada, do the full. It wasn't a 14-day, but it was a 21-day quarantine because I'd come from India. So I did everything the right way, the way you're supposed to do everything. But it was a big just challenge coming back from India. But keep in mind that, again, I'm a Canadian born who would never think I would ever have to deal with what I was going with, let alone like, trying to get out of India to make it back home. But like with COVID in the hospital, and like the most traumatizing thing is seeing people in the same ICU unit as you and pass away, and there's nothing you can do because at the end of the day, I'm also, just a Canadian, like an NRI that's in a hospital bed with no access to anything other than whoever from the outside of the hospital is able to help me get out, which was family in India that was able to actually get me out of the situation. So it's kind of crazy to say, but if I didn't kind of go through all that, like would I really have made that life kind of change? And a lot of things happen for a reason. I think this was obviously very crazy and bizarre that I had to deal with all this, or not really deal with it because I brought it upon myself. But everything happens for a reason, and I think this happened for that reason, that it was meant to be. If I didn't actually go through all that, maybe I wouldn't have changed my whole life. I've been over 4.5 years sober, no plan of ever drinking again. So I went from being a severe, drinker, like extreme alcoholic, drinking every day. But here's the crazy thing. So I know it's easy to say, oh yeah, maybe he just got the gastric bypass. No. So again, what happens is you're forced into a calorie deficit. So I lost weight in a very unsafe way, but there's people that can lose 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds safely, and you don't need to do any of this. But my situation was different. So when I'm posting like a video on TikTok or Instagram, I'm not posting it to say, hey, let me show you how to lose weight, or hey, let me show you how all this. No, it's more of, there's a lot more to it, but I'm showing that it is doable. Like no, hopefully no one has to get to the point where they have to lose more than half of their body weight. But for me, I was too far gone. But what I learned was I had no sense of nutrition. I had no sense of working out I had no understanding anything of whatsoever. So when I had come back, I had to kind of learn everything on my own. So this was kind of like a kickstart booster. But what had happened was so after 6 months, what happened? My weight stabilized, so it wouldn't come down. So I had lost maybe about 100 pounds, but I had a goal of another 200 pounds to go. So 1/3 of my weight actually, obviously, that whole kickstart to everything was because of that gastric. But after that, I'm back to normal. My stuff, have my full eating, everything, like everything's back to normal. So what do I do now? That's when I kind of started learning. So before that, I had no understanding of macros, right? So carbs, protein, fats. So I had no understanding of that. What I can say is that I learned a lot after doing all of that, because now I'm interested in knowing how I can lose more weight, right? But do it the right way. So the first 100 pounds was not done the right way, but the next 200 was actually done the right way. I know it sounds crazy to say. So I had a mix of everything. So that's why there's no real short answer when I'm posting a video and someone's asking how'd you lose weight. So now again, we're 6 months done. Now another two years to go for the rest of the, let's say about 200 pounds or so, because the last 25 were actually very hard to do. That 175 or so took about a year and a quarter, about a year and a half or so. So I learned on my own, just by doing research online, that there are many ways to lose weight. So I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not some gym expert. But when I started looking into stuff, I'm like, okay, I'm losing weight, but there people go into the gym with different goals. So I learned, okay, if I'm not going to go to the gym, how I'm going to set my macros to be able to obtain that goal. Now, I did a combination of both because I was already on that. I already had that kind of wheel in motion of losing that weight. So I'm like, okay, I'm on an extreme calorie deficit. This is an unhealthy way, but I was started getting way too skinny, which I'll put up a picture, but I started getting way too skinny. And when I had gotten skinny, I'm like, okay, I'm getting way too weak. I was at like 1,000 calorie consumption a day, but I was going to the gym every single day. So I was doing an extreme cut, but this was an unsafe weight drop. So I was at 1,000 calories a day, and I was putting in almost an hour and hour and a half almost a day at the gym. I would do 45 minutes on the treadmill. So right after the 6 months was up, like with the, so actually even during the 6 months that I had done the gastric, I still had to do everything at the gym. Remember, I'm forced into a deficit as is anyway. So now my body's more immune to doing that deficit once like I'm back to normal. But I had gone to the gym every single day. I was doing an hour and a half. So my point is gastric's not your solution. It's a kickstart. And would I recommend it to anyone? I wouldn't, because I went through hell doing it. But I've learned that many people are able to do it without it, because people that message me, they clearly have done it on their own, and salute to them. And I actually salute them more than I salute myself, because I had to go that route to do this because of how deteriorated my health was, right? But I've gotten tons of messages from people where, hey, like I lost 90 pounds in a year because I watched your videos, which is amazing to see. So when sometimes people are quick to kind of throw you down and say, oh, this is all this is all that, I mean, it makes no difference to me, because I'm not here selling anyone anything. I'm not saying I'm your gym expert. I'm not here saying I'm a nutritionist expert. I'm none of that. I'm just a normal person, just like every other person on the other side of the screen. Sometimes I'll see messages where people are like, oh, it's easy to do this when you have money. No, I worked every single day. When I was traveling, even like when I would go on vacation, I have videos of me in Bahamas on a cruise ship, and I'm still in the gym, and I'm still going through the buffet line and eating clean. I didn't matter where I was in the world, I was eating clean. But so again, I started off by not understanding macros. And this is where I think this is a good point where people can kind of take my flaws, and if you were to do it today, you can do it a lot better than I did. So my flaws were not understanding, again, macros. So I would eat, Caesar salads, but with high fat dressing. Then I learned, I'm like, okay, Caesar salad's got 30 grams of fat in it. Very, the protein, yeah, grilled chicken is not that much. It's half a breast. But then I learned, I'm like, wait, 30 grams. I'm like, for the same amount of, that's 700 calories Caesar salad, I can put together a plate of like a chicken breast that's literally like 200 and change calories, like unseasoned, with maybe 6 grams of fat, with 38, 40 grams of protein, and I still have another 500 calories worth. Like salad is not much calories if it's undressed, right? Maybe 50 to 100 calories worth, and put like a low calorie dressing with whatever. I can double up my protein and be still half, and still have more budget to eat more things. So I learned these things as time went along. And that's where I was able to kind of make things better. So before, I had no understanding with the macros. So what I would do is just eat, what I thought was healthy, and be on a deficit. Slowly, I kind of learned that, look, you can lose weight the unhealthy way, and you can be on a deficit. You can do intermediate fasting. You can do a keto diet. I did all of that. I went for 1 year, I did no carbs. But then I learned that you don't have to live without carbs. You can actually have carbs. You can do, you can fast if you'd like. But that's not the only way, to balance it. It's good. But I did a combination of fasting. I did a combination of calorie counting, with adjusting my macros. So what I would do is I actually used an app called Lose It, and I would actually start tracking. So I would say, if you were to start today, the number one thing that you should do is learn macros. So learn your maintenance weight, number one. Learn what are sorry, not your maintenance weight, my apologies, what are your maintenance macros. Then the general rule, of course, is that, as someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I saw was that 3,500 calories worth equates to about a pound of weight. So if you have a goal of losing, let's say, a pound a week, and I think a healthy weight drop is between 6 to 8 pounds a month at max. Anything more than that, I think, is a little too excessive, which is, again, why it led to me having a lot of loose skin. And I know there's a lot of information all at once, and there's a lot of mixed information, and it's all over the place. It's because I have so much to talk about, right? But again, sorry. So if you are able to first learn what your maintenance calories are, let's just use a ballpark that is 2,500 calories, and you have a goal of losing a pound a week, and you don't have any time to go to the gym, but you do have time to prepare your meals, or just kind of make your meals. Then, okay, first step is understanding macros, whether it's stuff you're making at home. So reading food labels and understanding how much protein is in a certain portion. So I would say the first kind of starting step is just that. So if you're watching this video and you want to start somewhere, download any app, any tracking app, whether it's Lose It or any of that. Then just look at a calculation to see what your maintenance kind of calories are. Then you're going to start doing a little bit of research. Spend a week, spend 2 weeks researching food, researching kind of how you can gauge whether it's fast food, because literally every fast food restaurant will still have a cleaner option of food that you can eat, or you can make a cleaner option. I would go to places like McDonald's and get like a grilled chicken, no bun, double up the protein, get double chicken. I would do the same thing at Harvey's. So even if I was on the road, I was still able to eat cleaner. I would just obviously not get mayo. I would just put different, maybe if I wanted hot sauce dressing, whatever it was. But being on the road and going to fast food places, I would do that. If I was making stuff at home, again, I knew kind of what I was making, because I spent a few weeks researching food and understanding, okay, a grilled chicken breast, or versus salad, or versus this food or that food, healthier snacks, just kind of different things. You learn kind of things not to snack on, things you can snack on. You learn what you should eat more of. Like, okay, yeah, if you're going to tone up, you can eat more protein, you can moderate your carbs, but you want to reduce how much fat you're taking in. And it's very interesting, but it is a lot of information. And this is why I would say your first step would be is to understand kind of the food labels and macros. Then in the app, start recording. It doesn't matter if the food in your eyes is healthy or not healthy. Record it. Get a routine going of health, tracking that food for a couple of weeks. Once you've tracked the food, let's say you're like, oh, okay, I'm eating anywhere from 22 to 2,800 calories. Let's just say you're like, okay, I want to cut a pound a week. 3,500, divide that by 7. So what's 3,500 divided by 7? Sorry, I'm trying to focus on the video and do the math, but 3,500 is 500. Okay, so you're like, okay, I need to do a 500 calorie deficit, but I just want to do it with food. Sometimes just removing simple things, like removing, for example, cheese. Like if you're going to eat a chicken bowl and you just took cheese out, sometimes you can eliminate like 100 calories just like that. If you wanted to eliminate like some dressing out of a salad and put like a lower calorie dressing, you can eliminate 100, 150 calories easily, just like that. So, a few things, and then eliminate one maybe thing that you had that you were eating through the day, and you easily hit your 500 calorie deficit target. And in a week, there you go. That's your 1 pound lost. But if you're like, hey, I can't live without all this food, okay, and I'm going to do this exercise only. I did combination of both. I was every single day in the gym and obviously on the deficit. And the thing is like I literally have all the videos from day one to prove that this is not just gastric, that I every single day went to the gym. I every single day ate healthy. And I did it for a very long time, up until the last year, and I'll get to that as well. But once you can do that, you will see that you can either go on a food deficit and lose your weight, or you can just simply put in activity, go spend time at the gym, based on your weight. You can go on treadmill. I used to do like a 40-minute 12 incline, 3.5 speed on the treadmill. But then I also learned you can actually just walk, do a lot of walking. If you work an office job and you have the ability to go and do some steps, and like you can get a 12,000 steps in through the working day. Like I would sometimes get up and do my work on my phone, so I would just walk around all over the place. I would hit 15, 18,000 steps a day. At that point, I didn't have to go to the gym, but I would have days where I would have an extreme cut, and I would, it's all about balance. So I'd have an extreme cut, but then next day I could take it a little bit more easier, and I could eat a little more loosely. So it's all kind of comes down to balance. And see, I know the information is all over the place, but it comes back down to the point that there's not one way, there's many ways. It's not just gastric. It's not, I can't pronounce it. I think it's called Ozempic. Ozempic, yeah. Some people were commenting Ozempic, or like, I don't know anything about Ozempic. I can only talk about what I know. But there's a lot of different ways. But my point is you're not limited to just one way. Just because I posted a video of losing 300 pounds with help of gastric and doing everything, that's not the only way. You could go on an extreme deficit. You can go on a moderate deficit. You can make sure that this is, of course, a life change, which what I did for the first 3.5 years or so. But the last year I've been living more loosely, because I hit a point where I had a lot of loose skin. And like sometimes I know people like to troll and they'll throw a comment about tummy tuck. I actually need to do a tummy tuck. Why? Because I had lost so much weight so fast that all of a sudden my skin is, loose. So that's why the last year and a half I've been living more kind of, I wouldn't say freely, but I've been eating more freely, because I don't want to go through another surgery. So what did I do? I'm eating more. and then I'm cutting. So I'll eat more. Then like 2 weeks, I'll do a little bit of a cut. 3 weeks, 4 weeks, then I'll eat more for like 2 months. Then I'll do a little bit of a cut. The reason why I'm trying to do this is I'm actually trying to fill the loose skin and then do a cut again. Fill the loose skin, do a cut again, and it's actually very slowly working. It's been about a year and a half I've been doing that, and I've been same thing. Like while I was on a goal to hit a certain number with weight, I was doing a lot more to cut down. So when I was traveling, I wouldn't eat, as openly. I'd eat healthy. I'd go to restaurants. I used to go to every restaurant, even here, and just order a grilled chicken and a salad, and like it's good for the time that I did it to get obviously down to the weight that I wanted to. But when I got to that weight, I also learned that I got way too skinny. And look, like you can be heavy, someone's got something to say. You can be too skinny, someone's got something to say. Even when I was skinny, people would still say, "Hey, you got too skinny." So then I started, again, putting up a little bit more weight, more not about to do with what people were saying, but to do with being more comfortable where I wanted to be. So I put another 25, 30 pounds back on. So I went down from 220 to 250, and now I kind of hover around that point. So you'll never have a consistent weight because it's not easy to maintain a low number either, because it's just sometimes too not hard, but you feel weak. You still want to be at a point where you're comfortable. It's not about being the skinniest person, or meanwhile other people have goals of bulking up, and they're obviously more skinny tone. They want to bulk up. They're eating more. They'll eat higher fat foods. They'll eat things that are a higher calorie consumption to be able to go and lift weights and bulk. So that's kind of what it is. Like, don't be scared to go to the gym, because everyone in the gym has a different goal. Someone's there to lose weight, someone's there to gain weight, not gain weight, but like put on muscle mass, in a sense where they're eating more, they're picking up more weights. So that leads to where I am in my point and kind of time is, so I went from doing an extreme cut in weight, with everything that I did, to then, I of course I got married, I was traveling a lot. So I was like, okay, this is a good time where I'm able to enjoy, because I got to the point where I wanted to with that weight, but I had to lose skin. So I'm like, okay, now I can eat. The last year and a half, I've been eating more freely, but I'll still go to the gym, I'll still cut, I'll still make sure I get exercise in. So there's no magic that I didn't go and like I went to India where people think like, oh, all of a sudden this guy went, they cut all his freaking body off. No, I have 4 years of videos of every single day. If I did not do the work, if I did not eat healthy, there was nothing happening. And that's just kind of the reality of it. Is not There's no magic pill, there's no magic surgery where they're just going to cut you up and take all your fat off, and like all of a sudden you walk out a new person. But it looked like that when I post these videos on TikTok or like Instagram and stuff, right? um, but do you guys want to see more of this? Like, or this is extremely outside of my comfort zone to kind of talk about all this, but I wanted to make a video about it. And then this may be a very long video, so if you stuck around and watched till the end, I salute you. But if you ask today, where am I at in my life? So now I've done all the back and forth with cutting, not cutting, and now I'm gonna start slowly, not bulking, but I'm at that point where I want to start lifting more, and I want to start toning up, and I want to build muscle. So I don't need to be on those extreme deficits of 1,500, 1,400 calories. I'm maintaining around 2,200 right now calories average, 22, 2,300 average, and I'm not trying to cut down too much, because now I want to start going and start lifting and toning and start building some muscle. That's the next challenge for me. And this is probably where I will need some help from someone who's professional. So I'm not saying look at me and be like, hey, this guy's got some, professional advice. I'm not a professional. There's some amazing coaches. There's amazing, nutritionists out there that can give a lot better, advice than I can. And if you're a nutritionist and you're watching this, you're probably like, listen, you're insane for what you did. I know, because even during that time that I was losing all that like weight after the gastric bypass and going cold turkey like that with drinking, going completely sober. Fun fact, 4.5 years, forget about liquor, I haven't even touched pop. I haven't any of that. So even though I'm eating more loosely, I haven't touched any of that. But one thing I would say also, another key kind of health killer is sugar. Sugar is something you want to be, if you can avoid it, be careful with, because sugar was the number one culprit. And I have in the last year and a half been eating some sugar. The first like those 3 years or so, I didn't have consumption of sugar other than from like natural fruits. But I would say if you can avoid it, avoid sugar. Just my opinion. I'm not, again, a medical expert here, but yeah, so as you can see, this is a very complex scenario in my case of what I went through. If I wanted to lose maybe 50 pounds, I could have probably done it. But you also got to remember, I did all this. Even till today, I still have a fully torn ACL, but I haven't done the surgery because I was able to strengthen my muscles around my knee that are able to support it. And of course, obviously, I lost the weight, so that's why I never till today did the ACL surgery. But if I was that heavy, I don't know what I would have been doing, because it would have been too much to handle. So I'd be on the treadmill and like my knee would still kind of buckle. So I went through a lot, and I didn't just walk out of India with being 300 pounds less. I still had to do all the eat clean, and I kind of, something struck in my mind is those few weeks before, when I was doing the kind of the forced deficit before even doing the surgery, because you had to do it in order to even get that done. I realized, I'm like, why am I doing this? I'm like, if I did this for 3 weeks, knowing that I have to do it before, all of this, I'm like, I could have just done this on my own. And that's what I'm saying is, look, I'm not saying I'm a better person than anyone else, or anything. But I'm saying there's a ton of people that have done some crazy transformations. So did I have a kickstart to this? I did, but I also had to come down 300 pounds. In most cases, I'd say probably 99% of the people watching this video don't have 300 pounds to lose. So it is doable, but don't look at me as the person for all the answers. You have all the answers. All you have to do is do the research. There are a lot of healthy alternatives. People make a lot of great food videos on TikTok, and I watch a lot of them too. They're high protein, low fat, meals that they'll prepare, or there's a lot of fast food places that actually that are macro friendly. So the whole, hey, this guy, maybe you have to have time, you have to all this, you have to have money. No, that's all BS, respectively. You can do everything you set yourself out to do if you just put the time into it. Like, I still have a very busy life, but I still continue to make sure that I made it part of my life. So I just pretty much, that's what I want to end it off with. I just want to say, yeah, there was a lot of information that I kind of just threw at everyone right there, one shot. Anyone that's been subscribed to the channel, I know it's a lot of car content. I'm not sure if you guys want me to talk more about more like health related stuff. Show everyone how you can actually make real healthier choices, whether it's fast food restaurants, like if you're on the go, and these are all things that I did learn. So there's no cheat code to it. You have to do everything. Whether it's making stuff at home, or again being on the road and like going to a fast food restaurant and actually picking something that's a little bit more healthier, that's macro friendly, right? But there's, again, nothing here I have to sell anyone. There's no courses, there's no product, there's no nothing. I just am pretty much here to share kind of what I've dealt with in life, what's going on in life. So I post obviously a lot of the car stuff, but now I wanted to actually talk about my health, and I thought this was actually fair to kind of post for anyone that really wanted to know what actually went on with my health. And I'm not saying anyone should go do gastric. I had to do it because my drinking was out of control. Food was one thing. I don't think food is as big of a culprit as drinking is, or pretty much liquid calories. If you're able to just control your liquid calorie intake, which for me was very excessive with drinking, I think you can be in the right direction. And don't think that it will happen overnight. You have to give it time, because despite even whatever, for me, it did take 18 months was a lot more of the intense weight loss, and after that was more of kind of the very stubborn kind of pounds that where I was trying to get rid of. That took a little bit of time. But if you stuck around again till the end of this video to watch, I really appreciate it. And I'm very straight up and just want to be transparent with everyone. I'm not here to deceive anyone. I'm not here to, I'm not, again, sometimes when people think, oh, I know a lot of trolls, salute to all of you, because at the end of the day, the world goes on thanks to, of course, all the trolls. But when I get some comments of, oh, you're going to deceive someone, how am I deceiving anyone? 99% of people that message are positive. And I'd say probably 2 out of 10 people that watch the video actually do end up making a change. And I know that because they'll message me and say, hey, thanks, like literally we just needed that motivation push. Even if somebody doesn't lose 300 pounds, even if they lost 20 pounds, even if they lost 10 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever it is, at the end of the day, they did watch that video, the ones that I post, of just the difference from before to after. It's not to put it in anyone's face. It's not to brag. It's not to say, hey, look at me, I lost this. No, it's just saying, hey, look, I was very unhealthy. And now the difference with losing weight, regardless, I went and I got it all cut off, whatever, right? Regardless what I did. The point is you can change. Like, and I feel that I literally have a new life. I don't feel like the person when I look at it, and sometimes it is hard to look, and I'm like, wow, I'm like, that was me, and it's crazy, just to watch. But yeah, no, again, thank you everyone. As always, appreciate all the support, and I hope that this gave some insight on it. And if you guys want to see more of this kind of style video, let me know. I'm more than happy to make it. Otherwise, we're going to continue making the car content, continue vlogging, video in there, and make sure you please do subscribe, comment, like, let me know. Let me know what you guys think. Just trying to be as straightforward as possible, and that's all. Thank you.